Have you ever met someone and felt like you already knew them? Not because of what they said, not because of how they looked, but because something inside you leaned forward, as if recognizing a memory not of this life, but of the soul. It wasn't chemistry, it wasn't timing, it was truth. A quiet, ancient knowing. A sense that everything, every ache, every misstep, every lonely night you couldn't explain, had led you to that one moment. You weren't falling for them. You were remembering something. Something sacred, something forgotten, a part of yourself that only awakens in their presence. And maybe it scared you. Maybe it made no sense at all, because how do you explain a connection that doesn't fit inside logic? How do you hold something that feels like it was never really yours to hold, only to feel? This isn't fantasy. This is the soul's language. And it doesn't speak in certainty, it speaks in symbols. If this already stirs something in you, I invite you to like and subscribe. It helps this message reach others walking this same quiet path. Today, we're not chasing answers. We're listening to the voice beneath the noise. To the part of you that's been waiting to be seen, not for what you do, but for who you are when you stop performing. Carl Jung believed that the people we meet are never random, that when the soul is ready, the universe responds, not with perfection, but with mirrors, not with ease, but with initiation. This is a journey of love, yes, but deeper still, of recognition, rupture, and return, not to them, but to yourself. So take a breath, let the story unfold, because what happens when you meet your true soulmate is not a love story, it's a becoming. Carl Jung did not believe in coincidences. He believed in something far more mysterious and far more intimate, synchronicity, the meaningful alignment of inner and outer worlds. Events that the mind cannot explain, but the soul instantly understands. When you meet someone who feels destined, you're not just encountering a person, you're encountering an event within the psyche. A convergence of memory, myth, energy, and inner architecture that bursts through the surface of ordinary life. To Jung, this wasn't fantasy. It was symbolic reality. You see, the soul does not operate in straight lines. It moves in symbols, in archetypes, in reflections. When you feel that pull towards someone, that deep, undeniable recognition, it's often not because of them, but because of what they awaken in you. Let's begin with a framework. In every human psyche, Jung taught, exists a vast internal world, populated not only by memories and thoughts, but by archetypes, patterns older than time. The lover, the child, the sage, the warrior. And within each of us, especially in the inner emotional life of a woman, lies a symbolic awareness of the soul's longing. For union, for meaning, for wholeness. So when you meet someone who seems to pierce right through you, you're not falling for their resume. You're falling into archetypal resonance. Something in their being vibrates with something you didn't know you had forgotten. Something ancient. Something primal. This is not attraction. This is myth. He doesn't fall in love with you per se. He falls in love with the mirror of his own unlived wholeness. And you, perhaps for the first time, feel seen. Not because he truly sees all of you, but because he reflects back the parts of you that have been waiting to return from exile. But there's a danger in this beauty. Jung warned of projection, the unconscious act of casting our inner contents onto another person. We do not fall in love with people as they are. We fall in love with the image we place upon them. For men, this often takes the form of the Anima, the inner feminine image buried deep in the unconscious. She is not just a woman. She is his soul image, everything he longs to remember about softness, about feeling, about surrender. And when he meets a woman who reflects even a fraction of that image, he falls. But not for her. He falls for the echo of his own sacred longing. And she, often unaware of this projection, feels a love so intense, so raw, so real, that she mistakes it for safety. But what she's really feeling is the weight of symbolic desire. Centuries of soul hunger crashing through a single gaze. This is why these connections feel faded. Why you think, I've known him forever. Because you have. Not as a person, but as a symbol in your unconscious. But it isn't only projection. Jung also spoke of the shadow. The parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or cannot yet face. And here's the paradox. The one who feels like a soulmate will often also be the one who activates your shadow. They don't just see your light. They uncover your fear, your doubt, your pain, and you uncover theirs. This is not punishment. This is alchemical heat, the sacred friction that turns unconscious into conscious, wound into wisdom, attraction into awakening. Because in the Jungian worldview, love is not meant to make you comfortable, it's meant to make you whole. And wholeness, true psychological and spiritual individuation, requires that you meet not only the parts of yourself you like, but the ones you've tried to outrun. You see, the soulmate doesn't come to complete you. They come to confront you with the truth of who you are beneath every role, every defense, every carefully curated mask. They come not to give you peace, but to give you the opportunity to reclaim the pieces of your soul you abandoned to survive. This is the path of individuation, the process Jung described as the unfolding of your authentic self. Not a self that adapts to please, not a self that performs to be loved, but the self you were always meant to become. So when you ask, what happens when I find my true soulmate? Know this, you are not finding them. You are finding yourself through them. They are not the destination. They are the invitation to descend, to remember, to awaken, to shed every borrowed layer of your identity and stand naked at last in your full symbolic truth. And here, in this moment, I want to pause, because I know this may already be stirring memories, moments you thought you forgot, people you still dream about, even though they're no longer in your life. Have you felt something like this before? I read every comment. Share your story. It may echo in someone else's heart. The reason these connections haunt you is not because you're weak or broken or foolish. It's because you glimpsed the sacred, and the sacred doesn't let go easily. But it also doesn't ask for you to stay in suffering. Because this, all of this, is not about possession. It's about presence. And when someone shows up in your life bearing the archetype of soulmate, they don't arrive to save you. They arrive to mirror the divine within you, so that you, perhaps for the first time, can finally begin to remember who you are. This is not the beginning of a relationship. It is the beginning of a rite of passage. A descent into the underworld of your psyche, a reckoning with every unloved part of your being, a resurrection of your real self. And the one who triggers this? They are not always meant to stay, but they are always meant to matter. Because in the Jungian view, the soulmate is not a perfect person. They are a sacred image, and their presence in your life, no matter how brief, is a message from your unconscious. You are ready now. You are ready to become. It doesn't begin with certainty. It begins with a feeling. A moment you didn't plan for. A glance, a voice, the way they said your name like they'd always known how it was meant to be spoken. You can't explain it. You try. God knows you try. But the deeper truth is this. You don't understand what's happening. You recognize it. And maybe that's what unnerves you most. It feels like a memory that was buried beneath lifetimes of forgetting. Not of them, but of yourself. You're not drawn to their presence. You're drawn to what you become in their presence. Your walls crack, your armor thins, and in that sudden aching vulnerability, something sacred begins. But sacred doesn't always mean soft. Sometimes it arrives as fire, sometimes as flood. Sometimes, the moment you meet them, your life starts to come undone. Not because they are wrong for you, but because you were never supposed to stay the same. Jung said that the soul is not interested in comfort. It is interested in transformation. And so when a true connection awakens, you don't just fall in love, you fall into yourself, into all the parts you abandoned trying to be what the world asked of you. You remember who you were before the world told you who to be, and it's terrifying, because now you can't go back. Not really. Not after this. You look at them and feel not desire, but recognition. You don't say, "Who are you?" You say, "Where have you been?" And beneath the surface of that question is a deeper ache. Where have I been? The soulmate doesn't answer that for you. They reveal it, not in words, but in the ache of their absence, in the chaos of your longing, in the parts of you that come alive and the parts of you that break apart. Because yes, there is beauty in this kind of love, but there is also unraveling. They don't walk into your life and make everything easier. They walk in and make it impossible to ignore the truth. And the truth is this: you have lived most of your life asleep. Not because you are weak, but because waking up hurts. Waking up means facing the grief you buried, the dreams you forgot, the love you gave to people who never knew how to hold it. And then here they are. This person who feels like a home you never lived in but always dreamed of. And your soul whispers, finally. But the ego panics, because it knows this kind of connection threatens its control. You start to feel things that don't make sense. Tears come without warning. Desires surface that you thought you had killed. You question everything, even your sanity. But you're not crazy, you're just remembering. And memory is not always kind. When the soul begins to stir, it brings with it everything you've left unresolved, every abandoned part, every frozen feeling, every echo of what could have been if you had dared to live from truth. This is why it hurts. Not because of them, because of what you are now being asked to face. And here's the sacred paradox. She was not a destination, she was a portal. He was not your completion, he was your mirror. You didn't meet them to settle down. You met them to wake up, and wake you did. To your grief, to your joy, to your hunger for a life that means something. You wake to the fire inside you that you've spent years trying to dim just to be loved. But here, in the reflection of their gaze, you see something else. You see the woman you were before you learned to shrink. You see the man you were before you built a wall of logic around your heart. You see the self you forgot. And that is unbearable and beautiful all at once. You ache for them, but what you really ache for is you. The you that came alive in their presence. And that ache is not obsession, it's a message. The soul doesn't fall in love with perfection, it falls in love with memory. Not memory as in the past, but memory of truth, of who you are beneath the noise, of what it feels like to be seen without condition, of what it feels like to be known without explanation. And so yes, you ache, you long, you doubt, you try to hold on. But the truth is, you were never meant to possess this person. You were meant to experience what they awaken, not to keep it, but to become it. You see, in the symbolic language of the psyche, soulmates are not life partners. They are thresholds. You don't walk toward them, you walk through them, into deeper love, into sharper clarity, into a version of yourself you prayed for without knowing how to name it. And yes, sometimes they leave. Sometimes they choose another path. Sometimes they never knew what they awoke in you. But don't let that fool you. It was real. Not because they stayed, but because you changed. The soul doesn't care about duration. It cares about depth. One moment of true reflection can rewire a lifetime of self-betrayal. And even now, you might still feel them. In the silence, in a dream, in the way your heart quickens when a certain song plays. That's not madness, that's memory. And memory is sacred. Because when you meet someone who touches the archetype of soulmate, you don't forget, you awaken. And awakening, as Jung knew, is never painless. It costs you the illusion, it costs you your performance, it costs you the comfort of pretending not to know. But in return, it gives you yourself. And that, my friend, is everything. Not every intense connection is sacred. Not every person who stirs your soul is meant to stay. This is one of the hardest truths to hold, especially when the heart wants so badly to believe. Intensity is not the same as intimacy. Obsession is not the same as recognition. Longing is not always proof of destiny. And yet, it can feel so real. Carl Jung warned us that when we do not bring the unconscious to consciousness, it will rule our lives, and we will call it fate. This is the danger of projection. The mind takes something sacred and unconsciously places it upon a person, often someone who cannot hold it, who cannot even see it, and says, "This is the one." But more often than not, we are not in love with them. We are in love with what they represent. We project the archetype of savior, lover, muse, father, mother, and mistake the symbolic for the actual. He reminds you of your father's absence, and you try to make him stay. She carries the softness you exiled in yourself, and you think she is your missing half. But what you're really doing is trying to heal an ancient wound through the body of a modern person. This is not love. This is reenactment. And if you're not conscious of it, it can destroy you. Because when you hand someone the keys to your worth, your peace, your identity, you're not loving them. You're abandoning you. Some of the deepest wounds are inflicted not by cruelty, but by misinterpretation. You felt something real. But it wasn't always real because of them. Sometimes you were simply ready to awaken, ready to feel, ready to remember your soul. And they, unknowingly, walked in at the exact moment the door was already opening. That doesn't make the connection meaningless. It makes it symbolic. But here's the warning. Do not chase symbols. Do not stay in pain hoping it turns into prophecy. The soulmate path is not one of suffering, it is one of awakening. An awakening can hurt, yes, but it should never diminish you. You are not meant to become small in someone else's presence. You are not meant to beg for crumbs from the hands of a person who doesn't see you. You weren't too much. You were the first to show him his soul, and he wasn't ready. You weren't too emotional. You simply held a mirror to his unlived grief. And when he couldn't face it, he turned away. Not from you, but from himself. That is not your fault. That is not your failure. That is the nature of soul-level connection. It reveals, and not everyone is prepared to see what it shows. So many women especially carry the wound of being too deep in a world that prefers the shallow. You felt everything, you remembered everything, and when he shut down, you thought it was because you were wrong for feeling so much. But the truth is, you were right, you were alive, you were present. And that presence, that sacred feminine awareness, it's not weakness, it's power. But power is terrifying to those still living in hiding. You must learn to differentiate between a true soulmate and a trauma bond, between archetypal love and a wounded inner child reaching for rescue. This is shadow work. This is what Jung meant when he said that individuation requires confrontation with the unconscious. You must ask, am I in love with this person? Or am I in love with the feeling I get when they reflect back the part of me I've abandoned? Am I drawn to them? Or am I trying to rewrite an old story through a new character? If love makes you betray yourself, it is not love. If you shrink to stay, you will never grow. Authentic connection may challenge you, but it will never require you to disappear. There's a difference between being awakened and being manipulated. A difference between being seen and being used as a mirror for someone else's ego. Be careful who you make sacred. Be mindful of the fantasies you build around silence. Sometimes the person who left isn't your twin flame. They're just emotionally unavailable. Sometimes the silence isn't soulful. It's neglect. And you deserve more than that. The true soulmate, if such a person exists in the Jungian sense, will not make you question your worth. They will call you inward, not outward. You will not have to chase them. You will have to face yourself. This is the deeper meaning of soulmate, someone who initiates your return to your own soul. They will not complete you. They will not save you. They will not erase your wounds. But they will trigger the moment you choose to stop abandoning yourself. You do not need to hold on to someone who walked away. You do not need to keep bleeding just to prove it was real. If it awakened you, that's enough. If it showed you a glimpse of your truth, that's enough. You are not here to be a symbol in someone else's unconscious drama. You are here to become conscious of your own. And from that place, whole, grounded, awake, you will stop asking, do they love me? And start asking, does this connection honor who I am becoming? Let them go if they cannot meet you there. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in truth, because the one you're meant to keep is you. Soulmates are not who you end up with. They're who you awaken through. And sometimes that awakening costs you everything you thought you wanted. The fantasy, the future, the identity you shaped around someone else's presence. But what you gain is yourself, not the self you built to be loved, but the self you buried to survive. That's what this journey has always been about. Not finding the one, but finding the one within and remembering how to live from that sacred place. So if you're still hurting, I want you to know, you didn't imagine it, you embodied it, and now you're becoming it. That love, the one that cracked you open, wasn't just about them, it was a threshold, a mirror, a call to return to the temple of your own soul. And though they may never say it, something in them shifted forever because of you. You were the reminder, the storm, the moment of unbearable truth. And maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they walked away. Maybe they stayed but could never meet you in that depth. Still, it mattered, because through them, you remembered what you forgot, that you are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose yourself, again and again, until no part of you remains unloved. So breathe. Let the tears fall if they must. This is not the end, it's the beginning. You are not alone on this path. Millions walk it with you, quietly, bravely, waking up through pain and learning how to stay awake through love. If these words found you at the right time, like, subscribe, and stay close. There's more ahead on this path back to yourself. And until then, remember this. The soul never forgets what it came here to feel. It never confuses loss with failure. It never asks you to settle for a love that costs you your truth. It simply waits, patiently, for you to return home to yourself. Because that is what happens when you meet your true soulmate.